of this.
See, he doesn't want to do
punching
the
down,
job.
insulting women.
He golfs and trades stocks. See, he doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar.
But it's disgusting. This is nothing but political theater. It shouldn't be out there. And it just shows this guy's true colors. It's sexist. It's sexist, misogynist. This guy has a problem. The way he has treated women, and it's all coming out in the open now. You know, with what he said about Natalie is just one more nail in the coffin on how this guy actually feels about women.
Dan's question was pretty straightforward. If you're going to be outraged over traveling on a plane with Natalie, are you going to be outraged over all those things?
I do not believe in demeaning women in any way, number one. Number two.
Okay, one sentence, and somehow everybody heard a different version of it. Ossoff says Trump would rather build a ballroom and travel with Natalie than do his job. Republicans hear a sexual smear, Democrats hear a factual description, and the rest of us are left checking whether the political dictionary has two definitions for the word sexism. Natalie Harp is where the story starts. She is not where it ends. Once everybody began throwing the word sexism at everybody else, the larger question became impossible to miss. Is sexism actually a principle in politics, or is it just another weapon that changes hands whenever the team swap sides? And just throwing sexism into the room every time somebody says something uncomfortable is not harmless. If the word becomes a shield against criticism or a grenade you toss at the other team, it stops telling us very much. Worse, an actual case of sexism can get waved away as just more political noise. So let us begin with the boring part, the actual sentence. Ossoff did not say Trump and Natalie Harp were having an affair. He said Trump wanted to travel with her. That was clearly a taunt, and people are free to call it cheap or distasteful. But the sexual relationship was supplied by the reaction. It was not stated in the speech.
Do you think that Ossoff's dig, which included Trump's personal assistant, was sexist?
No, I mean, it's just a truthful fact. You know, the reality of it is politics gets in the mud sometimes. And Jon
Ossoff was wrong to raise it in the way he did, because it was basically a sexual insinuation. And I just don't think you should do that.
And that is the honest disagreement. The words refer to things that are publicly observable. Harp works beside Trump and travels with him. Trump wants the ballroom, but wants to travel with Natalie is political rhetoric, not a quarterly report. One side hears the literal sentence, the other hears the wink. We should not quietly turn the wink into a fact. Personal sexual gossip is out of bounds whether somebody works in the White House or the corner shop. Official scrutiny is different. Harp is a taxpayer-funded special assistant and executive assistant to the president. Reporting describes her as a gatekeeper who helps determine what reaches him. Calling her a random private woman does not make that public role disappear. Naming a woman is not automatically sexist. Reducing her to sex is. Those are two different acts, and politics becomes much easier when everyone pretends they are the same one. Then the White House stepped forward to defend a woman from an allegedly sexist remark and reached for cock loser and feminine theater kid. That is a little like running a fire safety demonstration with a flamethrower. If femininity is part of your insult, the lecture about respecting women needs another draft.
Let me go ahead and just play it, because there's just such a long history of this. Trump punching down, insulting women. Let's just play it.
Scott, never complaining about it.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund.
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face.
Well, I'm asking you about survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
You know
If there's nothing incriminating in the file,
Quiet. Unbelievable.
Quiet, Piggy. You should be mad about the president calling a reporter doing her job Piggy.
Be consistent, Scott.
That's a pretty simple thing. Not controversial. It's pretty simple. We gotta.
It's what it takes to be a Democrat. Drag defenseless women through the...
That is the bit that matters. You can believe Ossoff's line was sexist. You can believe it was merely a cheap joke. But if your outrage disappears when Trump calls a female reporter piggy, then the principle was never the principle. The team was the principle. Democrats do not get to walk away polished and innocent either. If somebody is cheering because they believe Ossoff hinted at an affair, they are participating in the same unsupported sexual gossip they would condemn if the target worked for a Democrat. Our side was only joking is not a moral standard. It is an escape hatch, but there is also a difference between recognizing a loaded joke and inventing the relationship yourself. Ossoff's literal point was that a president at war is distracted and surrounded by aides who tell him what he wants to hear. We can judge that argument without writing a private life for two people we do not know.
But you specifically mentioned her, and I just wonder why.
Well, I've heard this particular aide referred to as his security blanket. And I think we could say that about any number of the senior aides in the White House. They're not telling him what he needs to hear. They're telling him what he wants to hear. And the nation is at war, and we cannot afford that.
The Democratic failure is often the opposite one. During the Me Too era, an allegation could become a political verdict before an investigation had finished. Al Franken resigned before the Senate Ethics Committee completed its process. 7 current or former senators later said they regretted calling for him to go. Taking an allegation seriously is not stupid. Treating the allegation, investigation, and verdict as the same event is. To be clear, an accusation of sexist speech and an allegation of sexual misconduct are not the same thing. We are not pretending they carry the same weight. What connects these cases is the political rulebook. When a woman is involved, does each side use the same standard for its own people that it demands for everybody else? Franken is the older warning about reaching a political verdict before the process finishes. A more recent test came with Graham Platner. Before getting into the allegation, one correction matters. Platner was not the corporate Democratic establishment's candidate. Schumer backed Janet Mills against him. Platner ran as an anti-establishment progressive. He had described himself as a DSA member years earlier, and he was supported by figures including Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Maine DSA recommended him in its voter guide, but says it never formally endorsed him. Those are different groups. Calling all of them the Democrats hides the actual fight. Then a former partner publicly accused Platner of sexual assault. He denied it. Democratic leaders, his progressive backers, and Maine party officials called for him to withdraw. Within 2 days, he suspended his campaign. They did not wait for a court finding or conclusive proof. They acted after a detailed named allegation they considered serious enough to make his candidacy untenable. Whether that was responsible caution or another rush to political judgment is a fair argument. Saying they covered for him after the allegation is not.
We are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not.
Now apply that same rulebook on the Republican side. Several women accused former Sheriff Mark Lamb of sexual misconduct and using threats or intimidation to cover it up. Lamb denied the allegations and a county attorney cleared him of criminal wrongdoing. Trump reaffirmed his endorsement and Lamb won the Republican primary. That does not prove Lamb committed misconduct. It does prove Republicans did not apply the Platner standard of the allegation itself makes the candidacy impossible. It would be false to say Republicans never act. Chuck Edwards left his race after a bipartisan ethics committee found substantial reason to believe he violated sexual harassment rules. Corey Mills lost support and then lost his primary while facing an ethics investigation. Max Miller denied domestic abuse allegations, stayed in his race, and Republican leaders largely deferred to an investigation. The rule changes from candidate to candidate, which is exactly the problem. And then there is Trump, who is not sitting on the allegation line at all. A civil jury found him liable for sexually abusing and defaming E. Jean Carroll, and the judgment survived his challenges. Republicans still made him their leader and put him back in the White House. That is why Republican outrage over Platner is so difficult to take seriously. Their standard can disqualify an opponent at the allegation stage, survive allegations against an ally, and then disappear completely after a jury finding against their leader. That is not due process, that is team loyalty wearing a judge's robe. Here is the annoying part. Ossoff said Trump would rather build a ballroom and travel with Natalie than do his job. He did not say they were having an affair. Everyone else filled in that blank. Then some of the people screaming sexism answered him with gendered and sexual insults of their own. Apparently respecting women is essential, right up until your team needs a punchline. And yes, if Democrats turn this into unsupported sex gossip, they failed the same test. But naming a taxpayer-funded White House official with direct access to the president is not automatically sexist. That is public business. And randomly yelling sexism whenever somebody criticizes a woman is not defending women. It is using a serious accusation as political armor. Keep doing that, and eventually the word stops meaning look at this real problem and starts meaning my team would like this conversation to end. That is bad for everybody, especially people dealing with actual sexism. The Republican hypocrisy is bigger here. They attack Platner before any legal finding, keep backing favored candidates through allegations, and refuse to hold Trump accountable after a civil jury finding. Democrats have a different bad habit. Sometimes they go from allegation to political execution so quickly that investigation and proportionality get left behind. The Me Too era gave us real accountability. It also gave us examples of a rush to judgment that some of the same politicians later regretted. These are serious subjects. An allegation is not campaign confetti. It should not be ignored, and it should not be treated as an instant conviction. Investigate it, protect the person coming forward, give the accused a fair process, then apply the same consequence whether the politician wears red, blue, or a novelty gold tie. Was Jon Ossoff's line sexist, or did the reaction tell us more than the original sentence? Tell us where you draw the line, like and subscribe if you feel like it, and have a great day.